Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. It's Kingdomize, the podcast. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Glad you're here. Glad you're with us. And man, we have been on a journey these last few weeks and months with all the Kingdomize guys. We've been talking about kingdom worldview, kingdom lifestyle, kingdom leadership, kingdom city impact. And so it's been amazing. The feedback from you has been great. So thanks for that. And I'm here again today with my good friend, Bruce Mann. And I say it every time because it messes his brain up. So I'm going to say it here. Bruce is our leadership guru. He is the guy that knows everything. Like if you need to know anything, like really anything about leadership, just give Bruce a call. He'll help you. Right, Bruce?
I'll try.
I love you. I don't
think I can live up to that. Yeah. I don't think I can live up to the hype.
Classical Canadian response every time.
You get me all the time like that. So
yeah, well, good to be with you, Bruce. This is going to be a great day, and today isn't about us. This day today is not about us. It's actually about those we lead. Today we're talking about Kingdom Leadership, Session 8, and it's how do we love those we lead? What does loving those we lead look like? How does it make them feel? What is their emotional paycheck? Oh, there's so much today, Bruce. Why don't you just lead us in, maybe tell us where we've been a bit and tell us where we're going today.
Well, the last few sessions, if people have been following along, we've been looking inwardly at our own self. How do we lead ourselves? How do we manage our own emotions, our own, kind of pathway? Today, it's more about how do we lead how do we impact those we lead? And under the banner of how do we love those we lead? How do we show them love? And the word, I use that word specifically because sometimes it's, it may be obvious, but it may also be a little uncomfortable in a work setting, in a work environment, to talk about loving people that we work with on a daily basis. But the reality is, as followers of Jesus, as kingdom leaders, our calling is to love people.
Yeah.
And we do that in specific ways. And, in the workplace, Hollywood has kind of messed up our understanding of love to a large degree.
Right.
And so it makes that uncomfortable. But the reality is that when we are looking out in the best interest of others, we're showing them love.
Just so I understand you, what you're saying is that as Christian leaders, don't love like Hollywood. Is that the first main point?
No, not like Hollywood. Transactional, romantic, somewhat skewed idea of love. That's not the love. In fact, I often refer to, the scripture we often go to is 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, right?
Yeah.
It talks about, that love is patient, love is kind, doesn't envy, it doesn't boast. If you look at all those qualities, and in fact, the original word is charity, and it's about others. It's about how do we respond to others in a way that's loving. And if you look at all those descriptors of that how love is described there, they're all outward. They're all things we can do. It's not about responding to somebody else necessarily. It's about how do we respond to them. And that's what I would put in the category of gift love.
Yeah.
It's not a response based on what someone's done for us, but it's a gift to others. And that's really where we want to go today, is looking how do we respond to others in a way that grows, nurtures, helps them achieve the best good for themselves and for the goal that we may have as a business or as an organization.
Excellent. So we've talked in the past about how we lead, how we become better leaders. This today is about It is about how we become a better leader by understanding that we lead people. It's not about stuff. It's not about the end result. It's how are the people we're interacting with and leading, how are they responding to the leading, and how are they growing based on how we're leading? Yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's jump right in then, Bruce. So how do we lead this way? Because this is a unique one, right? Because I think we'd all say, yeah, I have to care about those I lead and I have to blah, blah, but often we don't get paid for how our people feel around us. We get paid by, did we accomplish the goal? Did the project get done? Did the transaction happen? So we're not
Right.
saying those don't happen. We're saying what's happening along the way. So set this up for us about how we're going to do this effectively.
Okay, well, to begin with, when we're talking about being kingdom leaders, in the business context, for example, we're also talking about a kingdom enterprise, right? Which has different metrics. In general, in the business context at least, even in the organizational setting, it's about achieving the end result, the goal, the mission, the vision of providing something, doing something, achieving something. And we don't often think about the impact of what getting from point A to point B is doing to the people that are helping us get there. We just sort of expect them to give and give and give. And we could say, they're getting a paycheck. What are they complaining about? That's not a kingdom company. That's not a kingdom enterprise. The end never justifies the means. That how you get to the goal, how do you get to the destination, is as important as getting there. And in fact, it's part of getting there. So we can't separate those two. So under the, when we think about people who are engaged together in a task to achieve a certain goal, whether that's a business, an organization, even as a family, same thing. Getting a fiscal paycheck is not everything. It's one aspect. But the reality is that everybody has emotional needs. They have relational needs because they're human. And so there is what we could put under the banner of, and I use this title, the emotional paycheck. And the reality is, and studies would even show that that a fiscal paycheck is not enough to keep people engaged long term and feel like as though they are appreciated and feel like they're part of something. There's an emotional paycheck that goes along with it. And that's the part that brings satisfaction, that brings sense of achievement. And so we're going to look at that a little closely, because this is, as a Christian leader, as a kingdom leader, we are the primary, influencers and imparters of that emotional paycheck. Yeah. And so we're going to look at that today and look at it in fairly detail, because a significant amount of detail, because it's so important for long-term success and longevity in terms of leadership and keeping those we lead engaged and feeling like they're accomplishing something, that they're growing. It really is about creating a nurturing, healthy environment that doesn't just accomplish goals, but it builds people at the same time.
Yeah. Really excellent. And this really fits along with the idea that you're sharing here is Kingdomize, we have the multi-column balance sheet, whether that's for an individual or for a church or a business or even for a network, a city network, if they're working towards transformation, is that the bottom line, and we'll go business route just for a minute, is, yeah, you want to be fiscally responsible and accountable, and that's important. You don't have a business without it, but it's one of several areas or metrics, as you said, that we want to check. And today specifically, it's not just that physical paycheck, that monetary paycheck, but today it's about the emotional paycheck. And I really like that analogy. I think it fits well, and people understand it well when we share it. It's really good. So let's dive into that. What does that look like? What is an emotional paycheck? What does it come with?
Well, let me start as a reference point for us, and just use some verses from Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. Paul here is writing, and he's saying he starts this chapter talking about, being like Jesus. Great thing to do. He says, but do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourself. I'm not sure if you would agree with me, but I think he means that literally. Value others above yourself. That's a lifelong journey of discipline and, dying to self. Right there, that phrase.
Yeah.
We pass over it pretty quickly. It's we can kind of read it and go, oh, that's a cute thought. That's a nice little idea. I believe he means it when he writes it. So how do you do? We value others above ourselves, not looking to our own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. So he's giving us a reference point, particularly for leaders.
Yes.
This isn't about our fulfillment, being focused only on our fulfillment. I don't want to say we won't be fulfilled, because we actually, as kingdom leaders, we find fulfillment in helping others, right? That's where you cross the line from just a kind of a self-centric worldview and hope you're not hurting other people as you're pursuing it. Just saying, no, I'm fulfilled when I'm helping other people be fulfilled.
Yeah.
So that's deep spiritual formation in 2 or 3 phrases there.
Yeah. This the idea of the kingdom leader. Again, so we've talked numerous times about Glenn Diaz's phrase of there's world class and then kingdom class. Today, this idea from Philippians 2, this is a huge part of kingdom class. Huge part. Right? Yeah.
Totally. So if you use that as a reference point, we move from and begin to understand the difference between declared support and felt support. Declared support for other people and felt support, right? We can be really good and flowery and say, oh, I love the people I work with. I really want the best for them. We can declare that, and it sounds good. But how do we move from just declaring something to actually creating a sense where those we lead feel they feel the support that you're giving them as a leader? Because that's moving from just words to deeds. We're from, just ideas to actually doing something that's making an impact on people's lives. And that's where we kind of dive in here to the idea of emotional paycheck. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I want to just, give a reference here for a great book on that deals with this in detail from Brady Wilson. It's called Love at Work. Again, he's sort of playing on that phrase of, but the idea of how do we demonstrate love, sacrificial love for those who we lead, those who are under our care and and we're responsible for.
Which is a great question, Bruce.
Let's dive
into that. How do we show beyond declaration? How do we show so they feel it? What does it look like for that emotional paycheck? What are some of the areas there?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna identify 6 things here that are part of creating a healthy environment and all of these things come from the leader to those who are being led. So they're gifts in that sense. They're ways that a leader can not just simply speak words of support, but actually create an environment where those that they're leading feel that support. They feel like they're in a healthy environment.
Right.
And so this is part of this idea of moving from just declared support to felt support, the putting the interests of others above yourself. And it does, I want to clarify because we've said that a few times. This doesn't mean that your needs don't get met. It doesn't mean that you're not important in the mix. It means that our default response in circumstances and situations and decision making isn't to protect ourselves first before we think of others. We think of others first, and we're part of the equation, but we don't, it's not about us first. It's just a default response that others, how is this impacting others? Easy to say, not easy to do.
And maybe I would add here, Bruce, that we're not trying to get our emotional paycheck from those that work for us. Because when that happens, that selfish motivation blows everything up. So we need to have those areas, whether it's God or other leader networks that we're part of, that we're getting filled up as well, right?
Yeah, very much. And have the self-awareness to know that we need it and where we can find that support.
Perfect.
Because we're relational creatures.
Yeah.
We're relational creatures. We are best when we are in great and healthy relationships with others. Life is easier. Life is better.
Yeah.
It's just the way God created us. So let's dive in.
We've got 6 points, and we're going to jump in through these quickly. So if you're listening and you're here with us, that's fantastic. 6 points. We'll just touch on them. We could go deeply on each of these, but we want to touch on 6 points now about what does an emotional paycheck look like. So where are we heading, Bruce?
Okay, so let me go through these relatively fast, but I think they'll be pretty obvious. But just defining them helps us give us a framework to work from. So everyone that you lead has these needs. It's built into us. It's not because they're needy in the sense of being impoverished. It's just how we function best in relationship. And so each person that you lead needs to feel as though they belong. That they fit, that they're included in the team and part of it, right? That's that sense of belonging that all of us want to feel when we're investing our lives and our time and our energy into something. They have to have a sense of security, that there's some order and efficiency and some predictability to the environment that they're working in. That doesn't mean there isn't some spontaneity in that, but it just means that they can enter in with a sense of wholeness and feel as though their boundaries are clear, that they feel like confident in their role. And some of these are pretty practical, but if you have a chaotic, undisciplined environment, people they're not going to feel secure in that. They're going to feel like, where do I fit? What am I supposed to do? So if we're creating environments where that happens, that's going to bring health. There has to be a degree of freedom, that they feel supported to express themselves and to envision something that maybe improves, what you're hoping to do. Some flexibility, a little bit of adventure and autonomy, so that they have some space to grow, some space to learn, some space to try things.
Yeah.
And we're talking at a high level here, and obviously it has to fit the context. But people want that sort of, they want to feel secure in who they are as part of the team, but also to have some space to try some things. There needs to be a sense of significance, that you're part of it, and without you, there's a piece missing.
Right.
And so I'll, that's by creating these great environments, people then feel as though they're contributing and that what they're doing is significant, not just simply, putting in their time, getting their pay and going home, but they actually feel as though they feel significant as part of the team.
Yeah.
This relates specifically to a kingdom company. Is there needs to be meaning to what you're doing, right? And it needs to be aligned with purposes that are actually honoring God. And so, we won't go deeply into this, but it's certainly a lot easier to go work if and do your job and participate in a team if what you're doing is having a positive impact, providing something of need and necessity for people, and meeting a need socially or in other ways. So meaning, and that's one of the significant pieces in terms of people understanding why they're doing what they're doing. It's not just do your job, don't ask questions. It's here's why you're doing this job. This is adding to the bigger picture, and it's an important part. And that they have a sense of that inner witness that says, there's meaning to what I'm doing. Everybody has a longing for that, right?
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl wrote a whole book on man's search for meaning. We're
Yeah.
wired to have that our life has some meaning. And when there's no meaning to our life, we are adrift, and that's
Well,
when
it's the
really,
cause piece, right? Like everyone needs a
mm,
calling, a community, and a cause. It's that there's
yeah,
something bigger that I'm connected to and contributing to that cause piece
yeah,
for our life. Right? Yeah.
totally. The last one here is simply accountability, appropriate accountability, and that's both passive and active. It means, but be both challenged. We've talked about being accepted and having some freedom and security in your role, but also being challenged to grow, to improve, to take on new challenges, to expand your abilities and your talents. And so, if we go back, I'll just quickly go through belonging, security, freedom, significance, meaning, and accountability. When these are happening and working together, they create a environment that's productive. And we, under the banner of an emotional paycheck, people can come to work, come to what, whether it's again a business or an organization or even a family, and with a sense of I I want to be there. This is energizing. I'm growing by being part of this, and so that's when that emotional paycheck is being paid. Um, those you're leading are working from abundance emotionally, and that's
Yeah.
when you get great things happening. And the reality is that people will value that above fiscal reward.
Yeah.
They'll actually say, I want to work here, even if it's a lower paycheck than working here, because of the value I see in the healthiness of this environment.
Yeah. Yeah. You said that earlier, and it's very true. Like people will leave a bad culture for a lower paying job, right? And everything you just talked about is creating culture. So it's up to the leader to create that culture. And you may not put those 6 points in your culture of vision values statement per se, but this is what creates culture, right?
Yeah,
And we know that culture eats vision for lunch, right? So this is what
yeah,
allows those people to belong and receive that, I just say, emotional paycheck. Really good.
totally. So one of the things here, and I won't go into this deeply, but it's actually when people are not, when these needs are not being met emotionally in people, the result usually is they either check out and go somewhere else, or they begin to act out in unprofessional or unhealthy ways. They can become rebellious, they can become obstructionary, they can become negative, and responding negatively in certain situations. And so often when there's dysfunction within a team, it's because these needs are not being met in someone, and it's like they're starved. It's like they're working from a deficit, and so they respond and react in ways that are not helpful or healthy. And usually it's because their emotional paycheck has not been paid, and they're working from a deficit. And when people work from a deficit emotionally, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, really good clarification. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping up this part of the dialogue. We're about to hit application, but you have some thoughts about Jesus' life that I think are really significant. We go to this a lot in our dialogues about how Jesus lives. So let's
Yeah.
touch on that just before we bring application. Yeah.
Well, we know that Jesus was full of grace and truth, right? We can go back to John chapter 1 and remind ourselves that. But if you do a study on how Jesus interacted with those he was leading, you see him functioning in a way that powerfully shaped the lives of those who were part of his inner circle, who he was leading, because he functioned with grace and truth. It wasn't like it was just do whatever you want, I'm okay. It's not about me. It's about skillfully leading in a way that both challenged those he was leading, but provided room for them to grow, to experiment, to have a degree of autonomy and freedom, but a sense of belonging, like all the things we've looked at already, but also with accountability.
Yeah.
And so he would challenge them, but it wasn't, Jesus never came to his disciples and said, "You're messing everything up for me. I've got this big goal and you're not doing what you're supposed to do." And it was, how do I grow these people, develop these people to be world changers, to become leaders? We've talked about this in some of the past sessions. Jesus had two job descriptions. One we couldn't help him with, and that was redeeming mankind through the sacrificial gift of his life on the cross. But the second job description was demonstrating to us kingdom life and leadership, which is exactly what we're talking about here. And so we see Jesus powerfully shaping people, meeting the emotional paycheck of his followers, meeting their emotional needs as they were learning and growing and developing into leaders. It was an ongoing process, long after his earthly existence, that now was, the help through the Holy Spirit and others, and how God works in the body of Christ. But this idea, studying Jesus' life, you see how he met with each one, worked through different different people and those he was leading, and help them grow and develop, address the deficits that they may be experiencing, and helping them feel as though their needs were being met, their emotional needs were being met and challenged at the same time.
Well, it brings us back to Philippians 2, right? Because we read the beginning of Philippians 2 that talks about us and not having selfish ambition, vain conceit, that we should be humble. But then, obviously, we all know it's like, because our attitude needs to be like Jesus, although he was God, became a servant all the way to death. So we've got Jesus saying it and doing it. We got Paul saying it and doing it. So this has got to be easy. So I could just do this easily. No, that was sarcasm. But so give us the application. What does this mean for me? I believe what you're saying. I believe what you're saying about I need to do this. How do I do it? What do I do? Give me some help for myself personally.
Leading this way requires a deep level of self-awareness. And by that, I mean not just simply aware of our actions and how we're impacting people around us, but aware of our priorities. It doesn't take long for people who we're interacting with and leading to recognize what we value, what is highest priority for us. And if our highest priority is achieving a certain goal or a vision of some objective that we're reaching out to get at the expense of others, that's going to become clear very quickly. So we need to really be aware of what are we operating from? What are our goals? Like, what is it that's motivating us? This is a bit of a tricky spot, or a little bit of a tricky thing to do, but it may require a leader to go to those he's leading and say, "Hey, look, give me some honest feedback on how you're responding to my leadership. I don't have a special way of doing this. There's no, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but I think when a leader demonstrates some vulnerability and some openness to say to those he's leading, and obviously you don't do it to, 50 different people. There's maybe a core group of people. Say, look, help me understand, how am I impacting you? Am I doing things that you kind of question, you wonder what the motives are? Like, give me some honest feedback. That in and of itself demonstrates that you value that person's, who they are, and what, their understanding of the circumstance, the situation you're in. But it also, if we're open to it, can allow us to really say, okay, maybe I've got some blind spots here. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing about myself that it's impacting others in a negative way. We may hear some really good things. We may hear some challenging things. But I wonder if Jesus didn't demonstrate this in Matthew 16 when he says to his disciples, "Hey, who do people say that I am? Like, give me some feedback." And they start giving him feedback, and then he changes the question and he asks them, "Hey, who do you say I am?
Yeah.
Who do you understand me to be?" And I, you know, I don't know if that was Jesus being vulnerable or he obviously being intentional, but that's a pretty um, honest environment. Jesus
Yeah.
opened the door, and we know the result of that. Peter's declaration of who Jesus was, and Jesus' response to Peter. But I look at that and I think, man, what a wouldn't you? I kind of would like to have been around that fire, or sitting around that circle, and
Yeah.
being part of that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm being foolish about that, but that would have been a pretty interesting little dialogue to be part of. But Jesus being that vulnerable and asking, "Hey, who do you think I am? Who do you tell me who I am to you?" And
Yeah.
I don't know that what we're
Yeah.
talking about here is dissimilar to that.
As you're saying that, Bruce, I'm thinking about, and this is connected to what you're saying. Like, so you're talking about as a leader, I can go to those I lead, vulnerability, and say, how am I doing? I just want to throw in a plug here for what you do as part of Kingdomize is with when you go into, say, a church or a business or a network, and you help leaders with this, with the 360s that you do that. And if you're listening today and you want a good objective sounding board on how to do this, then get a hold of us at Kingdomize, and Bruce or one of us will come and work with you. And it only will help you as you see yourself objectively, how you're leading, how those around you see you're leading. Man, it's so significant because they'll give honest feedback. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more honest, maybe Bruce, with an objective third party, if you will, kind of thing. So wrap it up for us today. What's the conclusion? What do I need to do? What do we need to do? What does it look like leading well and loving well? What does that look like?
Well, I'm going to come back to what we started with and say this is not an easy proposition.
Right.
Most leaders are goal oriented. They want to get things done. They want to see things achieved. For us in those environments, we need to be able to balance both the objective of what we're doing, whatever that happens to be, and the care and nurturing of those who are essential to helping us get there.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to see are the collateral damage of people who are damaged and hurt, and as we achieve a certain goal, or and at the end you have to say to yourself, is it worth it, and have I actually achieved anything if I haven't helped to nurture and develop the people who helped me get here in the first place. It's just expanding our understanding of what it means to be a kingdom leader. It's never easier. Let's put it that way. There's added elements to leading from a kingdom perspective, but there's added blessings and sense of partnership with what God's doing in people's lives, and that's where our greatest joy should come.
Yeah.
From.
Yeah. Really good. It's interesting because I think every time we've ended with, this isn't easy. and
Yeah.
and I think that's a good thing to remind us of. As a leader, when you say, I want to be a leader, I'm going to be a leader, you should know that up front. Okay, this won't be easy. This will take all the
Yep.
self-sacrifice, all the IQ, all the EQ, all the whatever you want to say about it, humility to make this work, both for what God's saying for you to do and then to lead well, both for the end result of what God's saying, but the how along the way, right? And that's really, and
Yeah.
they're both really, really important.
Yeah.
Excellent. Really good today, Bruce. Thank you again. Fantastic teaching again for us today. How to love those we lead. How do we lead them well? How to be effective in that. And that's so, so important. So thanks again, Bruce. And thank you for joining us again on Kingdomize, the podcast. We're here every week. You can grab it on YouTube, Spotify. Tell somebody else about it. Join our community. Man, there's so many ways we want to bless and flow with you and what you're doing to see your kingdom endeavor come to pass in the biggest and greatest and most significant way God wants it to in your life and for others. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.